Okay, we are recording. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diana Schulach. I'm the Director of Operations here at Family Focused Resource Center. We're very excited to present to you a great new workshop we have, and today we're here with Dream Community Center. We have Dr. Edlyn Peña, who is going to be presenting on living your best life as a non-speaker. We also have our Spanish interpreter, Shelley, with us today, and we also have Samantha Moreno from our office in Antelope Valley. She will be on the Spanish recording as well. We are recording this in English and in Spanish, so you will have access to this on our YouTube channel after the workshop ends. Probably by tomorrow it will be uploaded. So we do appreciate your patience. You will be receiving a copy of these slides. Dr. Peña will be sharing this with us, and we will be sending that out with the link to the YouTube channel, as well as a short surveys where you can give us your opinion on the workshop, as well as we really love to hear ideas for other workshops that you would like to hear about. So I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to Dr. Peña, but if you could please withhold your questions till the end of this workshop. We will be checking the chat for any questions, but we will not be doing questions until the end. So go ahead and you can mute yourself. If you have questions, please put them in the chat so you don't forget them, or raise your hand or unmute yourself at the end when we are pausing the recording for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Dr. Edlyn Peña. Thank you so much for being here with us, Dr. Peña. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Diana. This is such a pleasure to be here. I love seeing all these faces and names on the screen. Welcome. So again, my name is Edlyn Peña, and I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. And I'm excited to talk to you today about living your best life as a non-speaker, information and strategies based on research and autistic input. And the title is really a simple way of talking about not only non-speakers, but also people who have minimal speech or complex communication challenges, all of the above. So with that said, we'll get started. I first want to say thank you so much to Family Focused Resource Center from CSUN for partnering with me and with the Dream Community Center to deliver this presentation. I was really excited to be invited to participate in this and to share some of the advocacy and scholarship work that I've done in the community. So just a little bit about myself. I am a professor at Cal Lutheran University in Thousand Oaks, California. I teach in the Education Leadership Doctoral Program there, and I love working at Cal Lutheran. I've been there for 16 years. I co-founded the Autism and Communication Center in 2016, and we provide lots of services to the community for non-speaking, minimally speaking, and autistic students in general, with services such as accessing communication supports and transition supports to college and adult life. So we do a lot of awesome conferences and workshops. But more recently, in June of this year, 2025, I founded the Dream Community Center in Westlake Village, California, and we are an inclusive recreation center for teens and adults. And this came about because of my most important role in my life, which is being a mom to my son, Diego. He is definitely my North Star, and he guides me and teaches me where things need to happen and resources need to go. And of course, now that he's 17 and he's going to be graduating from high school in June, I'm realizing how important it is to have resources in our community to serve adults, autistic adults, and neurodiverse adults. So Diego and I have done a lot of advocacy work together. The picture here is of him and I just a couple of months ago at Stanford University. We delivered a presentation on a panel at the Stanford University Neurodiversity Summit, and that was a lot of fun for us. He talked about his experiences as a non-speaker, the support that has helped him get to where he is, and looking ahead to his future. So with that, let's move forward to talk about the purpose of this presentation. I really want to explore the quality of life indicators and strategies for autistic individuals with complex communication challenges. So we're going to look at research and autistic input in talking about transitioning to adulthood. And I know that many people on the call or here are probably thinking, okay, well, maybe I'm also looking at childhood or teenagehood, but I think all of what I'm about to talk about really is applicable even looking forward. So thinking about now, how are these things, if you have a child or if you're a child listening yourself, these are things to be preparing for and looking forward so that you can have a full quality life as you move into adulthood eventually, because we all do eventually move into adulthood. And why does this matter? Why are we all here? Well, unfortunately, across all research studies that look at quality of life, autistic adults tend to have poor quality of life outcomes compared to neurotypical peers. So we know that much more needs to be done in the area of policy, services, programs, and we just really need to change this experience for autistic adults and neurodiverse adults who especially are non-speaking or minimally speaking. So when I'm talking about quality of life, what does that actually mean? And a quality of life is usually an individual's perception of his or her position in life. And perception is influenced by your context. So it could be the culture in which you grew up, the goals you have for yourself, whether they're personal or professional, how you want to live your life, your expectations, your standards, and any concerns about how you're living your life. Those are all part of your perception and all part of how you perceive your quality of life. I think one of the important things that I should mention, because this presentation is informed by research studies, so I did take a broad look at the literature in the last like 10, 15 years to see what does it say about indicators for quality of life. And I want to mention three important limitations to this research. Number one, most studies unfortunately leave out people who do experience complex communication challenges, and that's essentially leaving out about 30% or more of neurodiverse adults that could have been included in surveys or studies. So, unfortunately, there are limitations to who is actually participating in these studies, but we can still take a look at those studies and draw some important conclusions from them. So, it's important to know who the participants and subjects are of those studies. There's also this thing called researcher bias, right? So a lot of the researchers might be coming from a neurotypical lens. More and more neurodiverse researchers are being included as principal investigators in more recent history, which is great. But historically, what might be valued by neurotypical researchers or people in terms of quality of life, for example, what is social relationships like for neurotypical people? That might be different. That might look differently for neurodiverse individuals. And those values or experiences or expectations may not align. So we might be placing some definitions about quality of life and imposing them on a population that may look at it differently. So that's a second limitation to the research that we should consider. And lastly, reports from people close to the individuals instead of personal accounts are also a thing that happen in research where if a person on the spectrum is not themselves filling out the survey, then folks like family members or caregivers are the ones filling out those surveys or answering questions for them, which can lead to outcomes or results or interventions that may not actually reflect the needs. So I did my best to make sure to include studies that directly were surveying or collecting information or experiences directly from the source, which is individuals on the spectrum or autistic individuals themselves. So now that I have those caveats and disclaimers out of the way for research, I think one of the most important things we can all do, no matter what, is to make sure we're including the voices and personal experiences of autistic folks themselves, right? When we're not only trying to understand their experiences, but creating solutions, strategies, and interventions. So we always say, listen to the experts, the autistic folks themselves who experience what their quality of life and can share what they want. they are considered the experts here. So what I've done in order to make sure that we are considering and including their perspective is, in addition to research studies, I've done two things here. So I took a look at this book called Leaders Around Me, which are autobiographies of individuals who use augmentative and alternative communication, typing, pointing, and spelling. And this was a book I edited and it was published in 2019. Excuse me, but what was great about this book is it includes 45 autobiographical accounts of not only adults, but teenagers and children, so across the life spectrum, and their experiences of what it's like to navigate life, being a non-speaker or a minimal speaker. And in many of those autobiographies, they express their wishes and their perspectives on what their life goals and outcomes are. So this has been a source of information for this presentation. In addition to that, we collected information and perspectives from the Dreamers. The Dreamers are participants at the Dream Community Center that I just mentioned, that was open this year. Our center comes together. What we do is we offer a daytime activity and learning program for adults and teens, and we also offer social recreation classes like music, fitness, art, yoga. So we have participants coming in and out of the center, choosing the classes that they like or want to participate in, and what makes sense for them based on their goals and their interests. So we also talk to our dreamers here and we ask some of them, what does a quality of life, what does a meaningful life look like for you? So I'll be incorporating their perspectives along the way with this presentation as well. One of the most important things I can say in this presentation, and it's probably the underlying theme of this presentation, is that self-determination and agency are really at the core of having a quality of life for anybody, any individual at any age, right? But especially as somebody enters into adulthood. So self-determination is the ability and the right to make personal decisions, set your own goals, and advocate for your own needs. This includes having the authority to control the services you receive. It allows you to make choices about where and how to live and participate fully in one's community. It means being in charge of your own life with support instead of having others make decisions for you. I'm currently in the middle of thinking about this for my own son, Diego. He's 17 and he is going to be graduating in June, I mentioned. And, for his whole life, I imagined that he would go to college, and that was something that was expected of me from my parents. And so I realized, like, this year, Diego actually said, Mom, I'm not sure if I want to go to college. I'm not sure that that's where I want to go. It's scary. Am I going to be the only person who spells and types to communicate at the college? Who are going to be my friends? Do I need to get a degree? What does that look like? So these are now questions that we're having conversations about. And I realized that this is really supposed to be, a life that he's directing and has agency for. And so I'm making sure that his input drives the conversation for his goals. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So, not to start with the negative, but I think I just want to get this out of the way. Based on the research that we know, what are the negative predictors of quality of life for autistic adults? So again, this is looking at many different research studies across the board in the last 10 to 15 years. And these are the most common predictors or indicators of quality of life that negatively impact your quality of life. So mental health challenges, anxiety and depression, are the two most common mental health challenges that are co-occurring for adults on the spectrum. This can definitely hinder your quality of life and your outcomes for living a happy, fulfilled life. Also perceive stress. So the extent to which you perceive your life as stressful is an important indicator. The third is severity of your autism traits. So which could be communication challenges. So it really probably applies to most or all of our all of the folks that we're talking about in this presentation. But it can also include like sensory dysregulation or executive functioning issues and any other issues that are that fall within the autism spectrum. Next is isolation and loneliness. So not having social interaction, social relationships, participation in social groups or community. This is another area that's important for us to think about. And then the last piece is as individuals on the spectrum get older, their quality of life seems to depreciate or diminish over time. And again, I just want to point out that this research is very limited in terms of only it looks at folks across the spectrum, but mostly who have speech. So that's an important caveat. But I still think that it's important for us to look at and just check out this list and see, is there an area here that I should pay attention to? Is this something that is happening for myself as an autistic person, or if you're a parent for my son or daughter? Or children who are on the spectrum? Is there something here that maybe I need to clue into and pay more attention to? So let's go to the other end of this, positive predictors of quality of life. So the first one here is access to social support and social participation. So basically the opposite of isolation and loneliness, right? If people are part of social clubs or have a friendship group or meet regularly with people, maybe they're going to a class or something in the community, this would be a positive predictor of quality of life. Employment. So again, this is my caveat here is also the fact that what I've learned from research is that only 5% of non-speaking or minimally speaking adults are actually employed with a paid, independent employed position. So unfortunately, we're not seeing many employed individuals or adults on the spectrum who are non-speaking or minimally speaking, and that has been one of the biggest challenges for this group. Something we could think about or ask questions about is, are there alternatives to this that could help? So, for example, are there volunteer or intern type of positions that may be another way to get involved that's adjacent to employment? Would that be something that might be helpful in quality of life? And then leisure and recreational activities. And this also includes physical activity, making sure that adults get to do things that are fun. We all need to have fun in our lives, no matter who we are. We all need breaks and levity and recreation. So including this is really important. And then the last one is level of independence or autonomy. And this one is hard too because non-speaking folks may have co-occurring conditions like apraxia, motor control challenges, or other co-occurring medical conditions that make it difficult to be autonomous or independent. But I do tell people that and I think about it as a parent myself. Working on independent living skills is like a lifelong thing to do. You're never too old to work on independent living skills because the less dependent you are on other people, especially for like personal hygiene issues or personal care, the more likely you are to have a higher quality of life. All right, so let's talk about what are we going to do about this? And then here's where more of the folks from Leaders Around Me came in and the Dreamers came in, so we can talk more specifically about what can we do to help live our best life, basically. And then the first question I have is, where do we start? Where do we start to make our own life decisions and goals? And my answer to that, and I would say most of what I heard from Leaders Around Me, from the folks and authors in that book, are communication. It's all about communication supports. How can we make decisions? How can we tell people and express our decisions if we don't have access to communication? So if anyone here who is listening or attending the presentation is thinking of a person they're supporting, or if you yourself are the person who needs the support, Do you have access to communication? That is the first and foremost thing that we need to start with. And I talked about AAC earlier. So augmentative alternative communication can look like using an iPad with a communication app, using a laminated letter or alphabet board. Other people use other symbol-based apps out there. There's eye gaze, there's PECs, there's so many different kinds of AAC approaches. And the goal here, right, is to express your wants, needs, to participate and interact with others socially. And it's really all tied to that autonomy piece and to have meaningful relationships. And then you can express how you want to live your life with purpose, right? That's the whole goal behind this. I'm really lucky because my son Diego does have access to communication and he can express himself either through typing on a keyboard or using a laminated letterboard to spell out his thoughts. And he can tell me exactly, like, hey, mom, listen up. I may not want to go to college, or I may want to take a couple of years off before I go to college. So I'm just incredibly thankful that he can tell me that. And we can then have conversations around what does your life, what might that look like then? What will make you happy and what will make you fulfilled? So all of that to say, my last point on this slide here is the environment, the communication partners, and the settings should adapt to autistic communication styles. So when I'm talking about communication access broadly, it's also about who in your life is giving you access to communication, right? Are people in your life trained to give you access to communication and to support your communication on a daily basis? So I actually have some questions here for you all to think about for yourself or for the people you support. Where in the environment do I have access to high tech or low tech support? So do I have access? Is it only in one place in my house or where I live? Do I have access to communication when I leave the house? Do I bring something with me or am I without any access? So thinking about the places where there are gaps or where you're feeling highly supported and identify those. Who around me is trained in communication supports? So I may be with people as an autistic person who are there to support me, but may not be trained in communication. And are there ways to get those folks on board to be trained, even if it's just as simple as using a choice board or using a whiteboard to make choices? That is an amazing start and a really great way for people to determine what they want to do in that moment or that day or whatever decision is being made at that time. And how can I make this environment more communication friendly? For example, does everyone talk directly to me as an autistic person, or do people around me give me enough time to respond? So if I'm visiting a doctor's office, for example, is the doctor speaking to me as the participant, or are they speaking to my parents or caregivers directly? Thinking about even modeling that. Like as a parent, I model for my son's pediatrician and doctors and dentists to speak directly to him and make sure to ask him questions. So he is a part of that conversation and he can make decisions about his life in those conversations. Supportive social relationships and inclusion then is like the next thing I want to talk about. So we talked about communication access. But essentially, the next thing is having those connections to people and meaningful relationships. This is really important for psychological well-being, for your self-worth, and for quality of life. And so some people in the research studies that I read talked about wanting relationships, wanting romantic relationships, or just hanging out with friends. And I know from like leaders around me, and even I see it here at the Dream Community Center, sometimes folks just want to show up and be with their community. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to be having like neurotypical conversations or always in communication with each other, but just even being in the same space and participating in the same activities. I have been told by them through their AAC devices or letterboards that in and of itself has been very meaningful to them. And I, as a neurotypical mom and parent, I've always pushed for inclusion and education and community. I always thought it's really important to be included and integrated in inclusive settings. And there is a place for that. But I also think that that what I've what I've been told by our autistic participants is they also want to be with their people. They want to be with their peers and with folks just like them. Just like when Diego asked me, are there going to be other people who spell and type to communicate when I go to college? That's a very valid question because he doesn't want to feel alone in that process, which, as we all know, transitioning to any new environment like a college can be scary. So, feeling accepted and able to be yourself is one of the reoccurring themes in what autistic adults say matters for a good life. So, some of the questions I would consider in either asking yourself or the people you support. So, first, where do you feel like you belong? Where do you feel like you can be yourself the most? So, ask this question of the person that you're supporting or of yourself and think about that. Where do I feel like I belong the most? And this word belonging is super important in the research literature, in education, and in sociology. When you feel like you belong somewhere, you feel fulfilled, you feel like you're part of a group, and you feel like you have the support you need. So when you walk into a space, how do you feel? That's an important question. And then what are ideal places or situations for social opportunities? Some people might want like a structured social group, and that helps facilitate that interaction. Some people just want, informal places to hang out. Who would you like to be involved in social opportunities? Who should support me in that process? Do you want to be around neurotypical people or in more of like a mixed group? Do you want to just be with like friends just like yourself? Like, is there a mix of things? And it might depend on the circumstances or the week, even. Um, and then thinking about those conversations so that you can determine what are my goals for having social support in my life every week, maybe every day if you're that adventurous. All right. One of the most important things I took away from the research is and I don't think this is surprising, is that tailoring the supports to each individual is really important. So what we know, and I did say earlier that the severity of the autism traits predicts your quality of life. So typically when we have more severe, and I'm going to use quote severe traits or characteristics of autism, they say in the research that that predicts more negatively on your quality of life. But what's more important and what actually mediates that is the level of support and social networks you have to help you navigate those complexities or layers or challenges that you experience in life. So, if you focus on the supports and who's in your life and what you have access to, that's where you want to focus your energy on. And not only that, but you want to tailor it to what makes sense for you. So, whether it's accommodations or services, what are the things that you need to address your specific preferences, your intentions, your goals, and your wants and desires? One of the things that I think more research needs to be done on is including autistic adults, specifically non-speakers and minimal speakers, in terms of physical and mental health solutions. We know that physical and mental health is important for every single individual, whether you're neurotypical or not. And we also know that, as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of co-occurring conditions for folks on the spectrum, right? So medical conditions like seizures, apraxia, and so forth, and then mental health conditions like um, uh, depression and anxiety. So this is another question to ask yourself, whether you're a parent or a caregiver, or you're a person listening to this who would like more support, is thinking about is there therapy or support groups that would be helpful to me? Is there self-regulation practices that would be helpful to me so I can become more self-aware of how I'm feeling in this moment, how I can regulate myself? Those are really important pieces. So these are the questions that go along with this. Thinking about assessing yourself in this situation. What are barriers to my healthcare? So what are barriers to visiting the doctors in my life, to visiting the dentist? Where have things improved or where can they improve? And then, would talking to a therapist help me sort out my stressors? Is there a communication partner that I trust to go with me to therapy, right? So it's not just about getting the help from a person. Like it's already hard to find therapists, doctors, and dentists who are compassionate, kind, patient, who can work with non-speakers, but also the fact that you need a communication partner to support you in those interactions is another piece of the puzzle in accessing healthcare and mental health care. And then what self-regulation strategies can I practice even for 5 minutes a day? You know, what would help me get through when I'm feeling regulated? I think that's the key is when I'm feeling regulated, what can I practice in this moment? Like breathing, meditation, other kinds of strategies that might help regulate your nervous system. And then when you're in moments of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, bringing out those tools, bringing out those strategies to help you navigate this wild world that we live in, right? So I want to share with you one of our dreamers. His name is Colin. He's minimally speaking. He has some echolalia, but he is a wonderful adult, young adult who attends our center, and he is part of our daytime activity and learning program, Dream Team, we call it. And Colin is awesome. He comes a couple times a week, but more recently he expressed to his mom that he really wanted to develop his skills in guitar. So he attended some of our group music classes, and then he indicated that he wanted to become more proficient as a guitar player. So he is now taking independent classes with us, playing the guitar, and he decided to take yoga classes with us. So it's really cool to see Colin expanding his repertoire and his skills and his recreation at our center. And he's always talking about friendships. Like that's something he not only, he said, he always talks about friends when he speaks, but when he types or spells and then when he writes. And I wanted to share just like what he said here in terms of what would make his life more fulfilling or what would make it more of quality. He said he wants to continue classes at his local community college. He wants to transfer to UCLA and graduate. And he said he wants to work in the dorms, which is very adventurous of him. And then he also likes at UCLA, he practices or attends religious services. So that's been a big part of his life. He eventually, which is like the big question for all of us, parents and adults, is where are we going to live, right? Colin says, I want to live on my own with supports and eventually live with friends. He says he wants to continue the programs he's in for his social life. And then the last thing he listed here is that about his doctor. So he has a new doctor, and he says he listens to me better than my previous doctor, and I'm able to receive urgent care and appropriate. And I think that's the end of that sentence. But it was a really great exercise for him this week. We just did this week. We asked the dreamers, tell us what would make your life meaningful, fulfilling, and fun. And these are the things that he talked about. So I do want to end with some thoughts about living because that is sort of the big question that a lot of us have for our growing or transitioning into adulthood or adult participants or children is where will life happen or continue in terms of residence. And in the Leaders Around Me book, some of the folks talk about living on their own. There is one adult in the book that is in an adult or sort of a group home, I would say, a group home. And then there's two other ones that talk about getting their own apartment and how they have 24-hour support. And so I think that it's incredible that their parents were able to coordinate that with the regional center or other supports around them to be able to transition their son into a place where they have those full supports in place to live an independent life or autonomous life. And this is one example, Michael Falvey. I'm going to read this out loud to you, and this is from Leaders Around Me. At the beginning of 2018, I was able to move out and into a very wonderful house with some very good friends, Tim and Robert. I love my roommates, although I do miss my mom. I have my own room and bathroom and enjoy every minute of living on my own. I have support, and I have been so happy at my new place. I really like my staff and am getting to know them well. They see me as the competent and caring guy I am. My roommates have three dogs and a cat and a goose named Lucy. Life is good living on my own. I am so happy. I moved out because I wanted to have more freedom and choices and fun, and I want to have a grown-up life. I wanted to make my own choices. For those of you who are thinking about moving out of your parents' home, do it. You will be happy and you will have a better future. It is great. I share this because oftentimes, as a parent, I often wonder and question, how will my son Diego live independently? How will I make this work? And I think I need to see examples just like this, that it is possible, it does happen, it has been done. There are people before us who've made it happen. So I think I need to keep meeting and reading and learning more about these examples to, make sure that Diego will one day have a similar living situation if he so chooses. He's still young, but I do want him to have those choices in life, and I think it's important. So as I close up with just a few more thoughts, the main message today is that it is important for individuals to have the support to be able to participate in meaningful activities, to have choices and control over their lives, and to be included in everyday life, whether it's home, leisure, or community. And the running theme across the research, leaders around me, the dreamers here at the center, and across most places, I'm sure, is that being myself in this world and feeling good are the emerging thoughts or perceptions as what's important to a quality of life. So where do you feel like you can be yourself? Where do you feel like you belong? These are the important questions to answer for yourself. So that is the conclusion of my presentation. I did include a QR code here in case you're interested in learning more about the Dream Community Center and the work we do. I've also included my email on my website and all the good things. And I welcome questions. I'm really thankful again to Family Focused Resource Center for having this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Peña. That was so insightful and wonderful and hopeful, which is really the most important part. So we're going to go ahead and pause our recording right now in our Spanish and language channel.